thoughts on such a move for her to make this switch?
Yeah, Joe, and like me, Hailie has been out of our motorsports world for a little bit, to your point. And truth be told, we are all so buzzing here at the Grid Network when the news dropped on Monday about Hailie's big move. And completely selfishly, my initial reaction was pure excitement just because I'm such a fan of open wheel racing. And it's just exciting to have not only another name joining the Indy Next series, but another woman as well. So will say now that it's Thursday, I've had a chance to ruminate on it a bit, and my initial excitement has fallen off a little bit. I'm having a much more realistic thought about what to expect from Hailie next season. And this, to use your word, Joe, this is such a move for her. She, of course, has come up through the off road and dirt racing, and up until next year, her experience has been in stock cars or trucks. And stock car racing is hard. Open wheel racing is hard. I know we're going to get into it a little bit later on the show tonight, but I think we just have to be prepared that Hailie is going to be in a year of transition. She's going to be in a year of adjustment. And I think even thinking it's going to be like this and she's comfortable within a year is pushing it a bit. I think for the foreseeable future, she is just going to be like going through and getting used to her new environment. I know when she initially came onto the scene, she was dubbed as a prodigy of sorts, but I think as we've discussed several times on this show, she's really never met those predictions about her performance. So I can be totally wrong, but again, this is the realistic Thursday version of my brain saying I don't think we're going to get the same bold predictions about her future in a single seat, but obviously very excited to have her join Indy Next, and we're all wishing her nothing but success.
Yeah, I see both sides of the equation here. I can see why, a lot of people have some reservations and think, and it's kind of ironic because this has been kind of the argument the last several years, right? She's not really learning much in ARCA. The fields are so short. Put her up to trucks. Oh, trucks has so much chaos and controversy in that series, and half the drivers don't know how to use their heads when they're racing. So put her in the Xfinity series, and then obviously she struggled there as well. But that was the idea, right? At some point in the NASCAR career, you have to take that step forward, and you can only use you've got to give her timeline for so long. But now with a career change like this, that's exactly what you have to say. You can't expect her to just go out, to Emily's point, year one and, shock the world and set the world on fire or anything. It's going to take some time, and it's going to be a challenge. And, I made this point on the Encore show on Monday night as well. It reminds me of, Jimmy Johnson, I think the last major, NASCAR name to try to come over to the open wheel scene and race in Indy cars. And of course, not an apples to apples comparison because he is a 7-time Cup Series champion, and he was trying to jump straight into the top level in the IndyCar series. But think of all the success that he had in NASCAR. Hailie Deegan really did not have over in the stock car racing world. And then you think about how much he struggled when he first came over, and really never got the road courses down. He performed well on the ovals when he gave those a shot in 2022. But it was challenging for him, even with all of his accolades over in the NASCAR world. So, the one thing that Hailie has on her side that Jimmy didn't is time, to Emily's point as well. Only 23 years old. She still certainly has a long career ahead of her. But again, I think we need to be realistic in our expectations of what Hailie Deegan is going to be capable of in year one. It's going to be a challenge. Jamie Chadwick proved that, enough with her coming over from the European ladder. Even though she was still racing open wheel single seater, she had a lot to learn. And Hailie's coming over from a completely different world from NASCAR to open wheel. So it's going to take some time. It's a challenging move, but I think at the same time, it might be good for her to have a reset and move away from something where she clearly wasn't making the progress that she wanted to. This now gives her a fresh opportunity, and we'll see. Maybe she'll surprise some people next year as well in 2025 and Indy Next.
It's very interesting you brought up about Jamie Chadwick. One of the things I still always remember when we interviewed Linus Lundqvist in Portland, as we knew Jamie Chadwick was going to make the switch over to Indy Next, and how he said the cars handle so differently. the car has so much power compared to Formula Regional. Of course, we know Hailie Deegan's going to be doing an open wheel race over at Circuits of America in a Formula Regional car. Good experience, but I feel like, okay, that's going to be very different where you're going to get in Indy next. Overall, I said this the last time on Grid Tonight. I'm almost thinking about Ernie Francis Jr. going from Trans Am, the dirt cars, stock cars, came here at Indy next 2 years. He had a good number of top 10 finishes, but you need to be getting wins and podiums to make that next step. It'll be really interesting to see how Hailie Deegan will do and how she'll handle each race. But 4 races I'm looking at, those are the oval races. You have Iowa Speedway, Gateway, Worldwide Technology, the Milwaukee Mile, and of course, Nashville. She has plenty of experience on ovals, granted, stock car, truck series. Ben, you cover the truck series and ARCA Xfinity on Grid Encore quite a bit. Do you think she could potentially be a winning contender just because of her experience of racing in these oval events?
I think she might do better on the ovals than the road courses, but I don't see her winning a race in 2025. I think there's a lot of talent in the INDY NXT field, and I think that to say that she's going to be a winning contender, I think is falling into the trap of what we were just talking about on the last question. Raising those expectations too high for somebody who has a lot to learn and is going to be taking on a brand new challenge in a brand new series in a completely different discipline. Like I said, I brought up Jimmy Johnson as well, but Jimmy was somebody who, even in NASCAR, struggled on the road courses comparatively to how he ran on the ovals. Of his 83 Cup Series wins, only one of them was on a road course at Sonoma in 2010. So, maybe some of that translated over to his brief IndyCar career as well. And actually, when you look at Hailie Deegan's career, she actually had some pretty strong runs on road courses from time to time. She won a pole in the K&N West race at Sonoma, I believe, in 2019, and that was a race that had several Cup regulars in that field. And she had 5 top 10s in the Truck Series. One of them was at Mid-Ohio on the road course there in 2022. So, Deegan has from time to time been able to show speed on the road courses as well. So I think it's going to be, we just kind of have to wait and see, obviously, before we make too many bold predictions, other than I think the prediction that everybody is making here, but it's going to be a challenge. It takes some time for her to transition to. But, the ovals are going to be a different type of learning curve as well for her. It's possible that, again, she could have some strong runs here and there, but I don't see her winning any of these 4 races. I think the talent in Indy NXT and the background of those drivers as well, they have a lot less to learn and maybe less to unlearn, dare I say, with what Hailie has to unlearn. That's a phrase that Jimmy used when he came over as well. I've got to unlearn everything that I learned in my stock car career so that I don't apply it to, somewhere where it doesn't belong here in IndyCar. That's going to be the case for Hailie Deegan as well, even on the ovals, because, those cars drive so radically differently. So winning contender, I don't think so. She might be a threat for some top 10s, maybe even a top 5 later in the year. But I don't see a win happening.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Ben. And to use your phrase, like taking on a new challenge is challenging. And we've seen it before. You've talked about Jimmy making the transition over to open wheel racing. We've seen Kurt Busch attempt it. We've seen Tony Stewart attempt it. And we've recently seen Kyle Larson attempt it as well. And with my whole heart and soul as a viewer, I never truly thought any of them had a solid chance of winning, where we all saw them take on that challenge, which was at the Indy 500. Although there was a very brief millisecond of a moment where I thought Kyle Larson might do it last year in May or earlier this year in May. But I appreciate the positive notes that Ben brought about Hailie's career on road courses. I'm going to be, unfortunately, a little bit more negative as I bring her previous runs at these courses that she's been at. Her best finish at Iowa was 12th in 2019, 7th at Gateway in 2021, 22nd in Milwaukee just last year, and 21st in Nashville in 2021. So I agree with Ben. I don't know if we're going to have a winning contender in Hailie next year. I do think, just with any driver, if you've been to a track before, you do carry some advantage of knowing a little bit more what to expect, but she is in a whole new type of vehicle, so I don't know how much of an advantage that's going to carry over for her next year.
It's going to be really interesting to see how she responds in the ovals, of course, primarily road courses in Indy NXT. And as you talked about, we got to be realistic about what we're expecting her from the first season. But still, Emily, does she still have to go out and sort of prove and have some pressure on her to perform? Because we're not talking about a driver coming from, like, say, USF Pro. Hailie Deegan has name star power from NASCAR. Do you think there's still pressure on her to perform in year one?
Yes, and I'm not going to be able to give you a black and white answer on this, Joe. I really have thought about how I want to answer this because I think there are a lot of people like us that have a complicated perception of Hailie's performance and her potential. I do think, to use Ben's point earlier, this is a reset for her and that she can take control of her narrative. She's not chasing that potential that everyone pegged for her of being this next big stock car prodigy, the next Dale Earnhardt Jr., which was a very bold prediction, and always chasing those expectations and never quite being able to live up to it. She's had very mixed results the past few seasons that she's been in the NASCAR circuit, and it's challenging. It's challenging to overcome when people are giving these very bold predictions about you and you're just trying to go out there and learn new series every few years. So this is completely starting the playing field over for her. It's a complete reset, but she is a big name. I mean, all of us in the motorsports community were buzzing with this news. So despite this being a big opportunity for her to reset and take control of her narrative, I do think that a lot of people are going to be fully aware of the struggles the past 4 seasons she has had. And I think everyone from sponsors to potentially her own team. This HMD Racing has had the likes of David Malukas come through its door. So great drivers have come through this team. And above all else, I think the fans are going to be very cognizant of her past 4 seasons and aware of the opportunity she has with coming over to Indy NXT. So I think, in a world of fairness, she should have at least 2 years to really learn this new environment and her new car. But unfortunately, I think she is only going to be given a year at most to show that she has some potential. And again, a name that we've talked about many times on this show, Jamie Chadwick. We don't know what she's doing next year, if she's again driving in the Indy NXT series or not. She is going to unfortunately be compared to her and what she has done the past 2 years in Indy NXT. So a lot of pressure on Hailie Deegan. I think maybe she thought she was escaping it by moving to open wheel racing, but unfortunately, I think it will continue to follow her.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the situation, like Emily said, obviously, and like I've said, throughout this entire segment, we do have to give her some time, but I think that, at the same time, you would want to see some improvement from the start of the year to the end of the year. That's really what I want to see from Hailie Deegan in 2025. She doesn't have to go out and, be running top 5 or setting fastest laps right away. I think, again, that's an entirely unrealistic prediction and an incredibly inappropriate amount of pressure to put on her. But at the same time, it is a long season. You do have multiple opportunities to, go to different tracks and, try different setups up and, learn new things about how your car's handling and how to, shave off tenths of a second here or there. And you're going to want to see some of that. But by the time we get to, the season finale and, you've had almost a full season under your belt to learn all these things. I would hope that we see some improvement from Hailie Deegan. And if you want to make another comparison, my mind goes towards looking at Leah Block's career and her season in F1 Academy. Again, coming from a very different discipline in the world of rally racing to getting in an open wheel single seater this year. And through the first 5 races of the F1 Academy season, she only had 2 points to her name. And then in the most recent round in Singapore, she went out and had a pair of 4th place finishes and was just a couple of tenths of a second away from scoring a podium finish. So something like that is what I'd like to see from Hailie Deegan next year. Again, not saying you need to go out and get top 5s or even top 10s out of the gate, but by the end of the year, a handful of those would be nice to show the audience that you are serious about this. And I'm not doubting that Hailie Deegan's serious about this because I know she is. I know she's up for the challenge and she's going to work hard. But again, you don't need the results right away, but there's that line again. At some point, you do need to see that improvement. I think it would be good to start seeing that improvement towards the end of 2025, and we'll see where it goes from there. So you don't need it right out of the gate, but I think by the end of the year there is going to be some pressure to at least be a little bit better than where she started.